All right, coaches, welcome back to another episode of the New Jersey High School Strength Coaches Podcast. I'm with my buddy, Paul Collodi, up at Hunterdon Central Regional High School, and we are powered by the National High School Strength Coaches Association. If you're not a member, go to nhssca.us. We've had a lot of new members, reaching out because of the podcast, Paul. They've signed up some Jersey guys and people all around the country. So it's good. It's good to hear that people are getting fired up about being a high school strength coach or just trying to get better at running the weight room. Today, I'm supposed to have a phone call with a neighboring, a local high school football coach who runs the weight room. And basically, the kids that we train at my private facility are doing really well. And the kids were like, I think he likes me because I'm very strong.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, man, coaches tend to like that.
It's amazing how that works, right?
They like to see, what coach doesn't want to see effort, right? That's what we look for. We want to see the effort, the fight. And so in this episode, we're not going to talk so much about training. Maybe, I'm sure we might sneak it in there. We're going to be talking about some questions I've gotten because I've had experience, or still, I own my two private facilities. I've been at the Division I level. And then I got hired for this new position, which was shared when we did the previous podcast with Rich Carroll. And then on Twitter, I see this post by Alan Bishop, and he's the strength coach for basketball at University of Houston. He shares a lot of good stuff on Twitter. Some of it may be a little bit advanced if you're having large groups, high school kids, but he just puts out a lot of great stuff. So check out this tweet and we'll get into it. So he goes, I often scroll Twitter and I see two things. One, college strength coaches around the country complaining. I was laughing when I saw that. Number two, high school strength coaches in Texas dominating their craft, crushing the game, making good money, and loving life. Might be a few lessons in there somewhere, he says. And so there's comments replying, quite a lot of comments about coaches who transitioned out of college, got hired at a high school, and they're talking about making more money, having more free time, more family time. And it's been cool. And then somebody asked, hey, where do I find these high school positions? And somebody recommended the NHSSCA. And one of the coaches out in Arizona, he's one of our members of the NHSSCA. He's like, man, it has just been, he's like, I can't tell you how much better my life is. And I'm going to see if I could read his tweet. I think it's Coach Bewley, right? Was that what we said his name was?
Yeah.
Man, it's a pain in the butt to find this stuff. I'll have to dig it up. But basically, more free time, more autonomy, less stress, just good times. So you and I are going to chat about what we were doing before we got hired at our high school. And I'm going to let you go first, Paul, because you've been at your high school as a strength coach. Well, you were there as an athletic trainer, right?
No, I got hired as full-time strength coach.
Where were you the athletic trainer before that?
I was with the Somerset Patriots baseball team.
Oh,
and then before that, I was at Metuchen High School for 3 years.
Doing what at that high school?
Athletic training.
So let's talk about that, because that's an awesome school. I love that school. Such a small school. It's Metuchen, Manasquan, where I live in New Jersey, is like Metuchen by the beach, or Metuchen, it's a 1 square mile town, maybe 2 square miles. Small hometown feel, little downtown area. What was, so you're 3 years athletic trainer. Do you get tenured as an athletic trainer like teachers did and all that?
I was, back then, there wasn't a tenure track for athletic trainers yet. They were just talking to the Department of Education about, instituting that. And if I would have stayed there, I would have gotten tenure, no doubt about it. Well, right. I can say no doubt about it. You never know what's going to happen.
You never know, but that's, wow, what a great school. Also that era. So you were there 2007 through 2010?
No, I was there. Don't, you're going to date me now. Yeah. I was there from 1995 through 98.
Oh, wow. So 95 through 98, strength and conditioning is like not really a thing unless you're at the college sector.
Yep.
And the internet was very new. So people didn't really know much about that. Was like around when, quote unquote, functional training
Mhm.
made the wave. So 98, then where do you go to? Somerset Patriots, minor league
Yep.
baseball?
I got a call. I came home from work on a Friday. I got a call from the hospital that got the contract to supply the Patriots, and they said, "Hey, you were the first one we called. We want to know if you wanted to, start with the team." This was on a Friday. They wanted me in Florida for spring training the following Friday. So I talked to
What
my
happened?
wife. Yeah, I talked to my wife Monday. I go in, I talked to our AD, and his name was Mike Stang. He was awesome. And I said, Mike, I said, here's the deal. He says, if you don't go for this, you're crazy.
Really?
I said, and I was shocked to hear that. And it was in May, so I would have had to gotten out of my contract a little bit early. And he says, if you go to a Patriots game in 2 years and it's fantastic, he goes, you're going to be kicking yourself. He goes, I'll do everything I can to help you along. Um, I called a friend, Tim Sensor, who was at Kane University. He was running their athletic training program that afternoon. I said, hey, do you have any students that just graduated or looking for a job? That was on Monday. On Tuesday, I had one of his students who just graduated in my training room looking at the facility, meeting with our
AD
principal,
principal.
and the principal gave me his blessing, said, I'll help you with the board. And Thursday afternoon, I boarded a plane to go to Florida on Friday for spring training.
I graduated from Kane, December of 97. So technically it's January 98. So it was
Mhm.
probably one of my classmates, and the athletic training, like the internship and the hours that they had to put in was so intense. I'm sure
Yeah.
it's, quite rigorous everywhere, but I used to, as an athlete, I used to go in and, meet up with my buddies, and I was going through the health and phys ed track, but that was a very tough track. And so it's so good to hear that somebody supported you. Now, I don't recall hearing about Somerset Patriots until that late 90s, maybe mid 90s. So was that a new minor league organization
Oh
or?
yeah. We didn't even have a stadium the first year. We did 100 games, Zach, 100 games on the road every day, no off days,
So you
and
traveled by bus?
bus
Oh,
every
dude.
day. And I'll tell you what, I started loving strength and conditioning when I was at Metuchen, going in the weight room, helping
Right.
guys out. So when I got with the Patriots, I was learning about Mike Boyle. Mike Boyle was just coming into his own, just
Yes.
opening up his facilities, learning his stuff. So I ordered some bands. I had some dumbbells. I had them in a crate that would go in the bus, and we'd pull into a hotel. And I got to know the GMs at the hotel, and I say, hey Tracy, what ballroom's open tomorrow morning? She'd say ballroom
Oh,
B. So I'd go down to ballroom B first thing in the morning, put out all my stuff, and we'd run through some circuits down in the
so
down in the
you
ballroom B.
were not just the athletic trainer, you were doubling as the strength coach.
I was, yeah.
Did they tell you that you were going to be the strength coach, or what was
Well,
the?
I just ran with it. I mean, who else is going to do it, right?
Oh my goodness, this is better than the movie Bull Durham.
It was.
On the bus all the
Uh,
time.
so we had an old salty relief pitcher, John Briscoe, and oh man, what a great guy! One of my favorites. 5 year. If you play old Nintendo MLB, he's
Yeah.
one of the pitchers
Oh
that
my
you can pick.
God.
And we started, doing the stuff on the field too.
Yeah.
And Billy Blanks, you remember Tybo
Sure.
was just coming out, and
Yeah.
Briscoe's like, I'm tired of this Tybo crap, and all that stuff. It was Tybo from then on,
Oh
man. We
my God. What
were
you were
having a
doing,
blast.
he called what you were doing Tybo.
Yeah.
Dude, I got a funny story about that Tybo stuff. So, my wife and I got married in 2004, and she had seen an infomercial with Billy Blank's Tybo.
Uh,
And she's like, honey, order me, this, whatever, the DVD, they're call this phone number. I order the DVD, and it's like takes you from like press this button to end, press this button. I was like, man, I hit like 6 buttons. For the next 6 months, I was getting like DVDs every month, vitamins, everything. I was like, Danielle, this thing was supposed to be like 1995. I'm getting like dinged like 200 something bucks a month with like vitamins and videos. Yeah, and like equipment was showing up. I always bust my wife for that. Like I was supposed to order 1 DVD and I was like, man, they upsold me like 600 times on that phone call. I didn't even know what was going on. My brain exploded.
You got to find some of those old ones.
Dude, that is funny. So you're on the road. Man, that must have been brutal, Paul, because then you had kids, right? Did you have kids back
Not
then?
yet.
Not
No,
yet.
not yet.
Still brutal though, right?
It was tough. My wife came. Usually, she would come up on Fridays wherever we were and stay the weekend. So
That's
that
cool.
year we played in Bridgeport. So the Newark Bears and the
Where's
Bridgeport both played
Bridgeport, Rhode Island or
uh,
Connecticut?
Connecticut.
Connecticut.
Um, it's like 2.5 hours away, right?
Yeah,
Straight up 95 towards
sure.
Boston. So the Newark Bears actually played there as well. So when we pulled into Bridgeport,
The
we made sure
Newark
that,
Bears?
yeah, that's the only place
They
they can play
still
before
around?
well, they were then. That was their first year. So they've folded since then.
Wow.
Um, but they scheduled it so we would play a 4-game set against Bridgeport, a 4-game set against Newark, and then a 3-game set against Bridgeport. So we would be in Bridgeport for 11 days, which would be great because we could go get our clothes washed. We could, unpack a little bit.
Nice.
Nashua, New Hampshire was one of the places we played. Um, Atlantic City was one of the places we played. And where else?
Donald Trump was trying to pump up Atlantic City way back then.
He
Remember?
was big time. Oh yeah.
He dropped the ball.
So that place. Well, I'm not saying anything.
We're not saying nothing. No comment.
That's right. Um, but some great stories. I mean, you and I could talk for. I'd love to sit down and talk to you about a lot of these and with a lot of guys. Charles Poe was our left fielder. Charles Poe was famous for. He was the guy who lost his job when Michael Jordan wanted to play baseball
Oh,
with
right.
the Birmingham Barons. And Charles will tell you, he goes, yeah, he gave me a couple of sweatsuits, so that was good. You know. But Charles, one of the best players and people I've ever met. Tim Raines spent 3 weeks with us, and Pat Kelly getting ready for the Olympics, and got to throw BP to Tim Raines and take infield flips from Pat Kelly, and just some great people. John Briscoe, Darren Winston. I know we just
Yes,
discussed him before, an
yes.
Edison guy. Um, just guys who I never really knew why they weren't in the big leagues. I thought they were that good.
Right. What
Um,
about injuries back then, Paul? Like I love talking with coaches who've been around late 90s, early 2000s, and here we are 21 years later. What new injuries were you seeing now or the past 5 to 10 years compared to pre 2010? I feel like after 2010, the wheels fell off in a weird way.
yeah, I'm not sure they're new. I just that we see them a lot earlier in some of these kids. These
Like
kids are
what?
getting stuff that some of your rotator cuff bigger injuries, not just little rotator cuff strains, labrum tears, and torn off the bone. First labrum tear I ever worked with was one of our pitchers, and his was so torn he went to reach back to adjust his pillow, and he almost dislocated his shoulder. That's how unstable his shoulder was. But now we're getting kids, 16 years old with these labrum tears, and
Why, when you assess the physical, so I'm not a baseball guy. So when my son is pitching, I say, Ethan, do you know what you're doing out there? Because I don't really know what to say, like technique wise. So when you assess a baseball player and you look at him physically, have there been certain things that kind of pop out as like this guy it's a red flag that he might injure labrum, rotator? Is there something that you see physically in them?
well, once I started learning about the movements, functional movement screen, and looking at movement at a joint by joint level, um, yes, I started seeing more things, and making making sure that I did a great assessment on the hips and that the hips and the upper body could disassociate. So we wanted that serape effect, or that rotational effect between our hips. And don't forget, the hips are rotating different directions at a different time at different times. So it's not
Correct.
completely one. You know, your right hip is internally rotating while your left hip is externally rotating as you're delivering the ball. You know, as you're getting ready to throw, everybody thinks that they're keeping their eye on the ball, but they're actually rotating their neck to the left while their thoracic spine is rotating to the right. So there's a lot of not contralateral movements in different directions, and especially rotation. So we started looking at that, looking at cervical rotation, start looking at hip rotation, internal and external, how they work independently, how they work at the same way. And, you know, then looking at them pitching and seeing, well, you know what, they have a little bit of a deficit here that could actually, again, work their way up the chain to the point where now their shoulder, their biceps, their labrum could get affected because maybe their right hip is a little bit tight in internal rotation.
Right. You know what's so interesting too is do you know Driveline Baseball? Do you watch any of their stuff?
I've seen some of theirs, yeah.
Yeah, super intense, aggressive, like lifting, and with straight bar, benching, squatting, deadlifting, Anderson squats. And like here I am so conservative of like, oh, once you're, like a junior or you've got some time lifting, I don't want them touching a straight bar. I want them on a safety bar. And
Mm.
sometimes I'm like, man, do I just overthink these things? And so it's interesting how it's really not as a group baseball, but it's just like look, it's looking at the individual. Whoops, hold on a second. All right. My son just texted me that his stomach hurts and I have to pick him up.
Uh-oh.
And so this is so funny. All right, I'm gonna let me tell him I'll be there in 15 minutes. We're going live. Hold on, let
Yep.
me see. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Hang tough, buddy. Okay, so we'll have to do this as a part two. We're gonna go for like
All right.
another 7 minutes here. So you start working at the high school at what year, Paul? Oh, 2011?
2011 at Central, yeah.
And were you living in that area? How did they find out
Yep.
about you, and how did you find out about this position?
Well, in 98, with the Patriots, was my first year. And in 99, we opened up the ballpark. And I'm sorry, we went into the ballpark.
Right.
In 2003, the CEO of the hospital came to me and said, hey, we're thinking about taking over a space in the ballpark. You want to come over and look at it with us? And he took me into the third base. If you've been there in the third base side, there's 2 levels. It was supposed to be a restaurant. Walked in there and I'm like, wow, this is awesome. He goes, what about performance training and PT? I said, yeah, we can make this work. So actually helped design a facility, learning about code and everything else. And so we put the performance upstairs, we put the PT downstairs, and
Who did
opened up.
you
Opened up.
use Perform Better, as that was like an early
Not yet.
where would you buy equipment in the late 90s?
I had a friend in Allentown
PA.
who actually did some of his own fabrication. So
Wow.
he made a couple of racks for us. He made our sleds for us.
Oh my God.
Dumbbells we just bought. Actually, we bought the dumbbells from him too.
Nice.
We had them delivered. We carried them upstairs, put them on the elevator. But yeah, back then, not a whole lot of people doing what we were doing. I
Right.
think it was you guys, you just were starting.
I started in like 02. I put information
Yeah.
on the internet.
Well, I had one guy come from us to you, Snitch Jack. Played for Immaculata football. He trained with us a little bit and he came and trained with you.
Who? Oh, hold on. I'm texting. I'm sorry to everybody. I'm now my daughter's texting me.
Oh,
I'm going to pick him up in 10 minutes. I'm getting bombarded. All right. Now my son texts me back. Yes. This, let's give a little code for the newer dads out there. Stomach hurts means I'm not really enjoying school today. I would like to come home and do my own thing. My stomach will heal as soon as I get home. Right? That's so funny. So Sorry for all these
All
interruptions,
right.
these crazy kids I have. I told Paul before we recorded, I'm in my basement office, but if it's not a text message, I've got some windows there. I've been shot with Nerf guns during podcasts. I've given live webinars where my daughter pulled out her tooth. She had like blood all
Nice.
over her hand. The
Nice.
guy who recorded the webinar emails me. He goes, I hope our transcriptionist can type very fast because you were speaking very fast. It's because I saw her like climbing through the window and then doing little things near the desk and then kind of hovering around me and then just yanks her tooth out.
Awesome.
It prepares you for being a high school strength coach.
The memories.
The memories and just, expect the unexpected. So, okay, let's go back. We've got a few minutes. Go back
Yep.
to the setting up of the equipment. This sounds amazing. You're setting up equipment. You're hired as an athletic trainer, but now you're a strength coach,
Yep.
which I think would be really solid. You have more. James the Thinker Smith calls it like a global. I'd have to pick up his book again. It's like global strength and conditioning, where in the early Soviet Union, the sport coach was also the performance coach. And the performance coach also knew recovery methods.
Mhm.
That's why you'd see in the 60s, the wrestling coaches training them in wrestling. Then they're lifting weights, specialized exercises. Then they're doing massage. And they were very
Yeah.
in tune. I think you being strength that's why I call it a strength and performance coach. I feel like it sounds like you are aiding in performance, but you are also the athletic trainer.
Yeah.
So, now let's go. We have a few minutes. We'll definitely do a part two. What happened that you got into Hunterdon Central? How did that happen?
Well, I was going to leave the hospital for a new opportunity, and the opportunity came up, and it was a sales job. It was a company that sold compression shorts for women, and you know how the compression shorts now will actually help with fluid reduction. You know how they're tight in one area,
Yep.
loose in the other. Well, these actually helped with reduce the risk of ACL injuries by
Shorts, or were
putting
they
pressure.
like 3/4?
Tight compression. So they went mid thigh. And we actually had the research from some high end people in North Carolina at the University of North Carolina, and they worked. I mean, as far as I was concerned, they were a slam dunk. So I was going to do ACL prevention program along with, our reduction program along with these. We had them on the girls basketball team from Yale. We had them on the UPenn girls lacrosse team, women's
Big.
lacrosse team.
Yep.
3 months in, the business went under.
Oh.
Just like that. So now I'm out of work. I'm living in Hunterdon County, and the athletic director found out that I was looking for work. Their guy just happened to be leaving, and it was meant to be.
Boom. Lucky. So we will continue in part two. If you want to meet me after your workout today, we could do that.
Okay.
And nhssca.us. Would love to see more members get inside the Facebook group. And for our members, log into the website, go to the member resources, look at all the different articles with different programming, different training different athletic teams, getting the Board of Education members on board, fundraising,
Yep.
expanding your weight room. There's articles on all of that stuff. So nhssca.us. I'm Zach Evnish. This is my buddy, Paul Collodi. #family, #Sopranos, #we want a Cadillac.
Jersey way.
Jersey way. We will talk to everybody next time. This story will be continued, and then I'll talk about my transitions with private and collegiate. So we'll
I
talk
can't
to
wait to hear
everybody
that.
soon. Yeah, Paul, hang tight a second, buddy. I'm going to just stop recording.